And did you know that Adidas are the best running shoes there is? Oh no! Oh, you didn't know that? Let me give you an example. Sup? No, we just gonna go right into it though. Right? I don't know, I'm trying to test out this
3 years ago, my girlfriend and I decided to hike up near her parents' place in Oregon when we went to visit them for a week.
Alright.
We decided to bring camping gear with us and stay the night. We had been camping once before, and it was in Boy Scouts, so it had been a long time. My girlfriend grew up camping and knows her way around the area very well. So myself, her, and her parents' dog Bear, a huge Newfoundland lab mix, head up the trail. We saw a few people out, mostly day hikers. People love Bear and stop to pet him. So a little after 6, we make camp, set up our tent, pull out our grub. We had decided to buy a big sub sandwich, stuffed for s'mores, chips, and a few tall boys of beer. I fired up a joint and she pulled out her guitar after we finished eating. Great relaxing night, and we started winding down, getting ready to head to bed. She was in the tent getting dressed for bed while I finished and made sure the fire was out. Suddenly Bear growls this low, menacing growl I've never heard from him before. I pet him, look around, figuring it's an animal or something. We get to sleep, and around 1 I wake up to my girlfriend shaking me. She looks terrified. I hear Bear growling beside us, and she holds her finger up, talking low. She tells me that she woke up to voices. I listen, and hear what sounds like 2 men talking. Then we hear something absolutely terrifying. One of them says to his friend, "I'll take the girl. You get rid of the guy."
I would have jumped out, bust open, and be like, "You ain't taking shit," and start running. Hey, if my girl's behind me, hey, that's what's up. You know, if they're behind me, what's up? But if they not, deuces.
I knew we were screwed. We had no weapons of any sort. My girlfriend unzips the tent and Bear rockets out. I've never seen him move that fast in my life. I hear one of the guys scream, and I hear Bear snarling and growling, and I hear them running. My girlfriend takes the satellite phone her dad insisted she carry and calls her dad. He calls law enforcement, and we stay in the tent as instructed. Bear comes back, out of breath, no sign of the guys, and we wait for the ranger. When they show up, they find no sign of the guys save for a truck tire tracks and some cigarette butts. They gave us a ride back down to our car, and later that day, Bear got a steak and plenty of love.
Glad you had it.
Often mentioned to be one of the most dangerous jobs in America, being a delivery driver definitely has its pros and cons. Aside from the horror stories you hear of drivers being called to abandoned houses with malicious intent, being stabbed or even shot, I had no doubt in my mind that I wanted to try out being a delivery driver. My reasoning was led by the fact that it would be decent money for a college student, and I would get to do what I genuinely enjoy doing, driving around, blasting music, satisfying my nicotine addiction while on the clock, and getting to explore new roads and various landscapes. I didn't think much about the dangers, but I must have subconsciously realized that the area I was going to be delivering in was mostly a wealthier business district with little crime. My sophomore year of college was over, and after leaving my previous job to focus on my heavy course load, it was time to take advantage of the summer. I was hired at the first and only place I applied to for delivery. This was about a 30-minute commute from my house, and I would be delivering in a town and city that I had previously no familiarity with. Besides the nervousness of trying to impress at the start of my new job, I was excited to get started and get in my car. I must note that I was never warned of anything or told any alarming stories by any of the management or other delivery drivers. That's because there were none, until I landed the delivery shift 6 months later that would traumatize me.
Well, don't you think it's something weird about that? Just no delivery drivers or anything like that. It hasn't been in quite some time. Just saying. It's a bit weird. It's a bit weird. Just saying.
Changes in policies of this company. So it was a normal night per usual, and I was on a delivery to the neighboring city only about 15 minutes out. There was a confusing numbering system on the small apartment complexes that occupied the left side of the road. I had believed that my GPS took me to the right lot, but when I pulled in, I could not seem to find the apartment number that was listed. A nice guy was walking his cute little dog, so I politely asked if this was 22 whatever street, and he responded talkatively. He said no, sadly, and that he realizes how confusing these streets can get. Before I get a chance to ask if he knows what direction to send me, he quickly asks an assortment of questions, none of which made me uncomfortable. He saw I was delivering food and asked what it was. I had not put the light on top of the car, so it made sense that he was curious. Not a crazy amount of places deliver around there. He then got oddly excited, asking if I had a menu, what time we deliver until, and if I am the only one delivering on this Sunday night. After quickly answering kindly and interrupting, I asked if he could point me to the way because I was in a rush to get back.
Even though his questions seem like, straightforward, or his questions seem like it's not, it doesn't it doesn't seem to it doesn't seem creepy or anything. He's subliminally trying to creep you out. He's trying to get into your head. He's up to something. But he's being very subtle about it. But don't rule nothing out. You don't know this motherfucker. You don't know this motherfucker. So, don't rule it out, man. Keep your guard up, man. Be cautious, man.
He said he isn't too sure, but insists to walk his dog up the road while I drive out so he could help me figure it out. After a minute or two of navigating, he said where to try next. I thanked him, smiled, and told him to feel free to call for a delivery, and I'll be back out with your food in no time. I said this because he said he was starving, asked for a menu, and seemed so excited about the fact that we delivered. As the night came close to an end, I was hoping I didn't get any more delivery calls after 9:15. Delivery shut down at 9:30, but if a call was placed any time before that, I would be stuck driving and not get out till at least 10. What do you know? An order was placed at 9:20, and I would leave with it at 9:40. At this point, I'm on autopilot and just following my GPS, not paying attention to where I might be going. As I recognized the similar street, which I had only been on for the first time today, and hear my GPS say to turn left and 0.2 miles, I realized that it has to be that guy that helped me out earlier. I pull in, park, approach the door, and knock.
I just realized I cannot be if I was if my voice was like Siri or Alexa, or just like your GPS, I would be getting you all out in some of the best, worst situations. I'm just saying, what if you was driving, right, and you was listening to your favorite songs through Bluetooth in the car, and all you heard was music stops. All you heard was my voice was like, I sense red flags. Get the fuck out of there. Just, Or if if you're using GPS and it's my voice, you're like, keep straight for 4 miles. 4 miles. And a mile, turn right. Hold on, wait a minute, Wendy. Slow the hell down. My red flags are tingling. My senses are tingling. Back up, make a left, go around, and your destination will be on your left. You do not need to make this shortcut. Go around. Wendy, I got your back. You best believe that.
Faint music that seems to have gotten louder after my knock, so I ring the doorbell. I'm greeted by the friendly man, both of us smiling at each other. I guess you decided cooking wasn't for you tonight, huh? I say lightheartedly in a humorous manner. He then said something along the lines of, "Cooking isn't something I would waste my time on. Plus, I believe raw food is the most authentic way to feast." I laughed, thinking to myself that this guy is definitely an odd one. He insisted that I step in and put the bags down in his kitchen. Most of the time, I don't go into a customer's home, but it was so uncommon. I comply, step in, and he says to take off your shoes.
You've got to be shitting me. If I was a delivery person, which 10 times out of 10 I will not be, but if I was, I'm not stepping foot in nobody's place unless you my mans, you my homie, or that's it. Like, I'm not stepping foot nowhere, especially not in a stranger's place. I'm just going to step. I'm just going to be right here at the doorstep. That's even pushing it. Like, I kind of just want to deliver your food like a mail person. I just want to throw it to you. You know, just throw it. Just toss the pizza to you from my car. Just saying. The fact that I'm going to your doorstep is beyond me. But you're asking me to come in. No, I'ma stay right here at the foot of your doorstep. Just saying. That should be like my new catchphrase. Just saying. Just saying. I have a cramp in this arm, and it hurts every time I bend it sometimes. It's weird. But, yeah, man, if you're a delivery person right now, may God be with you.
Now, this made me feel uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah?
Never have I been told to come in someone's house on my delivery job, and then told to take off my shoes. This is an in-and-out job. I was not here to sit down and kick up my feet.
Right.
I figured this guy just had some issues or OCD, so I slipped my shoes off. This moment seemed to move in slow motion and last longer than it did. My eyes fixed on this stranger runner's small carpet next to a shoe rack that was made of what seemed to be black feathers. Simultaneously, I am listening to the song he has playing, which gave me a sense of extreme discomfort and anxiety. It was scarily familiar. I almost felt as if though I was experiencing the feeling of déjà vu. I follow him to his counter and place the bags down, next to what looked like a stuffed crow nativity scene.
Oh my God.
He sees me examining it and says, "Did you know when a crow dies, a mob of 100 live ones will gather it in ceremony? It's their way to learn about threats, and they hesitate to revisit locations where they have encountered a dead crow."
And did you know that Adidas are the best running shoes there is? Oh, no. Oh, you didn't know that? Let me give you an example. That's how you do things. That's how you do things. That's how you run.
I pulled out the payment slip for him to sign and shook off his previous statement, saying, "Interesting." As he signs, he continues the subject and says something about how he thinks we can learn a lot of lessons from the behavior of crows. I thanked him for signing, and as I moved to walk out, said I'll have to look into that, hoping to shut him up about his obsession with crows. As I'm putting my shoes back on, he says, one last thing. If I said someone was killed here, would you be hesitant to come back?
Obviously.
If I said I was responsible, would you revisit this location?"
Hell no.
I panicked, sped out, and fled to work with thoughts rushing through my head. A couple sleepless nights after that, and 5 months later, and the run-in continues to haunt me.
5 months?
Looking back, it seems as if though he saw something about me that made him want to know if I was the only delivery driver working. After telling him our close time for delivery, it would seem like he purposely planned to wait till the latest possible time, ensuring he would be my last delivery. I really still think about what this man is up to every time I work.
That's that shit.
I was about 15 when I got my first real job in West New York, New Jersey. My mom had sent me to live with my sister, who was 13 years older than me, and she and I had recently gotten into a huge argument, so much so that we hadn't spoken in over a week. Because of our argument, I ended up taking the bus to work that week. This place had a lot of people coming in and out, and I served coffee and pastries for the customers. I had just moved to New Jersey from Florida, and I've always been a relatively nice person, smile and conversationally friendly. Well, apparently, I left an impression on some man who hung around during the day to talk to me and just generally wait for me to get off. Again, I was 15 and he must have been in his 40s. I kept working, and as the hours passed, he would come and go, always checking in and seeing if I was almost done. I specifically remember him asking me questions about when I was getting off, do I live close by, who was picking me up, but he seemed friendly enough, so I just kept small talk throughout the day.
Oh my gosh.
I'd be rude. Well, I had a relatively short shift since I was so young that when my time to clock out came, I tried to leave without making a big deal about it. This guy was keeping a real close eye on me and starts following me out the establishment. He wants to accompany me to my bus. He wants to make sure I'm okay. He starts grabbing me by the arm and telling me to come with him. He basically stalked me the entire day, and now was his chance to make his move. At this point, I'm getting pretty scared, and since this was back before I had a cell phone or texting was even invented.
At this point, really? He started to get scared. He started to get worried. It wasn't at the point where he was just at the bus stop. He was just watching. It wasn't there. It wasn't there. It was 6 years later that's when he just started. He decided, maybe this is a little bit creepy. Maybe this is a little bit weird. You didn't notice in the beginning. You didn't notice. Oh, okay. I bet you didn't even notice what type of shoes you had on before you left the house, did you? Nah, probably not. Probably not. Yeah. Okay.
Did I even have a beeper? I had no way of calling for help. I hadn't made it far from my job. I was still in their parking lot, and like a bat out of hell, my sister came speeding into the parking lot, incredibly angry. When she saw this guy pulling on me, she got even more mad. Of course, she yelled at me and told me to get in the car. Then she proceeded to yell at the man who was very obviously trying to abduct me. He hauled it out, and when she got in the car, she started cursing expletives. What were you even doing with him? Etc., etc. I told her what happened, and she gave me the tightest hug, and we both started crying. Until this day, this is the part we both couldn't understand, but she told me that she was coming home from work that day, and she had a nagging sensation to go pick me up from work. She didn't know I was working, but she had the sensation that she needed to go pick me up. I worked a good 20 to 30 minutes away from our home. She proceeded to ignore this persistence. She parked, got into the elevator, and as the doors closed, something inside of her yelled or rang. All the alarms went off, and she listened. She got into her car, angry that she was listening to whatever gut feeling or intuition or guardian angel was alarming her. She didn't know if I was working, but sure enough, she got there, just in time. She has never experienced something like that since or before. I don't know what to make of all of that. All I know is she saved me. I quit that job shortly thereafter, and she never allowed me to ride the bus there again, or leave work alone.
MVP. Show enough. Show enough. A real MVP.
This happened a couple of years ago. I was a 9 or 10-year-old boy, and I was on the beach with my family and a friend of mine's family. She was around 11 or 12 at the time. At some point, me and my friend wandered away from our families and were just playing around the beach. We decided to explore the nearby area around the beach and got to a secluded spot in the forest that was maybe 5 or 10 minutes from where our families were. When we got there, we met a man who was all alone there. He was maybe in his mid to late 30s. He saw us and smiled and walked towards us. We just stood there, not really thinking anything was odd about him. He started the conversation by saying something along the lines of, "Hey, I'm a photographer for a model agency, and I couldn't help but think that you two are perfect for a photo shoot." He continued by saying he thought my friend was really pretty, and that if we agreed to the shoot, we would make a ton of money. At the beginning, we were really excited, and we told him that we just wanted to make sure that it was all right with our parents. This is when it started to get kind of weird, but I didn't really think anything of it yet. He said that we should just follow him and not tell our parents anything, and it wasn't far from here. And he kept talking about all the money we would make if we just followed him without saying a word. My friend started to get skeptical and said that we weren't interested, and started to walk away while grabbing my hand to make sure I followed her. He started to follow us, raising his voice a bit, and again continued talking about that if we just followed him and did the shoot, we would make so much money. This is when my friend held onto my arm really hard and booked it. He stopped following us, and he also stopped saying anything. When I looked behind me as we ran, I just saw him staring at us with a very annoyed look on his face. We told our families about this, and some of the adults went to where we said we saw him, but of course he was gone. I am grateful at that age that my friend was able to realize that something about this situation just wasn't right.
Oh. Because you was playing that whole time. You probably playing now. Just saying. Stop playing all the time.
I was maybe 22 years old and taking the bus home in a major city. The bus was pretty packed, so I didn't think anything of it when some guy sat down in the empty seat next to me. He had long, kind of greasy black hair, and I could smell alcohol on him as soon as he sat down. He didn't look much older than me. I had my headphones in and was on my phone, but he immediately starts talking to me. "Do you have an Instagram?"
Wow.
I make a show of pulling out my earphones, hoping he'll get the hint that I'm not looking to chat. I told him I didn't, which was a lie. "Yes, you do. I can see the app right there," he says, and taps his finger on the very visible Instagram icon on the screen of my phone. I'm immediately embarrassed that he caught me in such an obvious lie, and I blame that feeling for the incredibly stupid way I proceeded to handle this guy. He starts telling me to add him, explaining that he's a famous rapper and skateboarder, and insisting that I'd love his videos. He then tells me that I can look him up by his name, Taylor Swift. You mean like the singer?" I asked him. He glares at me and just says, "No, not like the singer." Okay. Getting really freaked out, I tell him that I don't really go on Instagram much, but I'd look into adding him when I got home. He then grabs my phone out of my hands and proceeds to open up my Instagram account, look himself up, and adds himself as my friend, all the while continuing to rant about his rap career. At this point, I'm really worried that this guy is insane, and I'm just trying to be as nice as possible in case he turns out to be violent. I'm sitting in the window seat, so he's blocking my ability to get up and move. Still, looking back, I wish I had started some drama when he took my phone. He then hands my phone back to me and asks for my phone number. I, stupidly too intimidated from getting caught in my last lie, give him my real one.
Why?
I then insist that the upcoming stop was my own. It wasn't, and I exit the bus. For the next few weeks, this guy calls me and leaves voicemails of his terrible, nonsensical raps. I mostly laugh them off, showing the voicemails to some of my friends, and joking about how I met Taylor Swift, the rapper. He also keeps adding me to these group texts in which he asks if anyone wants to meet him where he's at, and then all the replies are from people saying things like, "Dude, I don't even know you, stop adding me to these group texts." Maybe a month or two after this encounter, my roommate comes home and tells me she has some news. She works for a yoga studio, and one of her clients, another 20-something woman living in our neighborhood, approached her to warn her about a local creep that's been harassing a friend of hers. Apparently this guy had fixated on her friend after meeting her randomly on the street and started stalking her. Her friend had to get the police involved after this creep shoved a letter for her through the mail slot in her apartment, and the letter was full of nonsense and threats to find her and hurt her. As I'm sure you've already guessed, this weirdo referred to himself as Taylor Swift. Mr. Swift was caught by the police a few days later. He turned out to be a homeless guy who really had legally changed his name to Taylor Swift. He also turned out to be in violation of his probation, as he was previously convicted of assault and moved to our estate without registering as an offender. After he was caught, the police raided his phone and found literal hundreds of photos he'd secretly taken of women around our neighborhood, many of whom were teenagers. He did some jail time for this, but was released pretty quickly. Because of his name and his apparent determination to continue being a creep, I still see his exploits pop up in the news occasionally. Last I heard, he was stalking women in a city about an hour and a half away from me.
You was playing too. Off bucks you was playing.
Growing up in relatively rural Ireland in the 90s, there wasn't much to do other than going to the local play park. I was around 8 or 9 on this day. My cousin was with me, and she was a few months younger. We were walking along the huge green that led to the play park with a kid from the neighborhood, Brendan. Looking back now, Brendan had a learning disability, but at the time, I just thought he was slower because he was a bit younger than us. The park and green ran alongside a road in the middle of houses, and my grandparents and at least half a dozen of my aunts and uncles lived less than 2 minutes away, so I always felt safe. As we walked along the grass, a van going very fast pulled up alongside us. The sliding door was already open, and there were girls inside, I'd say around 18 years old, and they had this forced grin on their faces. I stopped dead in my tracks. I had this sinking gut feeling. All the things my mother had told me about kidnappings were going off like alarm bells in my head.
Oh.
One of the girls asked, "Do you want to lift into the village?" My cousin and I looked at each other. I could feel she was scared. We started to back away, but she continued to coerce us. "It's okay. I know your sister. I'm going to meet her now. Hop in and we'll take you. She told us to pick you all up." I turned around and ran. She was so weird and frightening, and her attempt to act casual was disturbing. I looked around, and Brendan was still standing just out of arm's length from them as she spoke to him, urging him to get in. I said, "Brendan, don't go with them. Come with us."
I said, "Brendan, you're fucked. Sorry. I'm out." Hey, either you with me or you not. Like, it's just that simple. It don't get no more blunt than that. Just saying.
The girls heard his name and started saying, "Brendan, no, come with us. We'll take you to your mommy's house. Come on, Brendan." After a minute of deliberation from Brendan, another car came around the bend, and the van sped off. I've always wondered who those girls were. Why were they so young themselves? Who was driving the van? Would Brendan have gotten in with them?
Probably.
What if one of us was alone in that moment? And why were they doing this in some random tiny village in a housing estate in the middle of the day? I'm glad I never found out. I'm a 28-year-old male and have 3 younger brothers who I feel very protective of, even in adulthood, because of this. We were in elementary school, and we would often play in the park behind our house or in the front yard with a neighbor family. They couldn't play with us that day, so we were by ourselves in the front yard. It must have been late afternoon or dusk. We were messing around in the front of the porch when suddenly a beat-up old light-colored pickup out of nowhere rolls up in front of our house and parks on the sidewalk in front of our lawn. We were kind of shocked because this truck appeared so suddenly, so we stopped playing and watched what's going to happen. A man dressed like a lumberjack, wearing some flannel or checkered shirt, gets out and walks onto our lawn, making a beeline straight for my brothers and me. He slows pace and is smiling as he approaches us, but doesn't stop and asks, "Is your mom and dad home?" with a sinister grin ear to ear. This is when everything became slow motion. I looked at my brothers, who had all gathered behind me out of fear. I said to them, "Everyone get inside," and they ran to the front door as fast as they could. The man asked again if my parents were home, as I too am going towards the front door. "Yes," I shout as I back into the house and start to close the door, locking every lock as he tells me through the screen door they're selling meat from the truck and they want to come look. I get a glimpse of a rusty meat locker with a padlock on it in the bed of the truck, and a woman in the passenger seat staring at this whole situation before I close the main front door and get the deadbolt locked. The man moves away from the door itself and starts peering through our bay window. One of my younger brothers yells, "Dad, there's someone here!" Our dad was still at work, though. We all run upstairs to where my mom is peeing in the master's bathroom and had no idea what was happening. We tell her everything, and she jumps off the toilet frantically and makes herself decent, all while panicking and saying, "Where are my babies?" She goes downstairs and pulls the front door opening. "What are you doing? Get away from my children." He repeats the line about selling meat, and our mom less than politely declines and slams the door in his face and calls our dad. He gets in the truck as fast as he got out and peels out as he tries to get out of the neighborhood. They didn't go to any other houses trying to sell their wares. They only spoke to our family, and indeed, to us minors. Our mom says she thinks he was planning to make us look in the meat locker, push us in, and take us away. I don't know what would have happened if that were true. One of my younger brothers was troubled with nightmares of being kidnapped up until his teenage years because of this unhappy experience. The story begins sometime around my junior year of high school. I was 15 years old, and in that phase of my life where I didn't listen to anyone, yet at the same time was completely impressionable. At the beginning of the year, I was sitting in my 6th period chem class, probably zoned out, looking at my phone under the clunky gray lab table, when I heard two people laughing to my right. The way the classroom was set up was a long rectangle, so essentially, the teacher wouldn't really be able to hear what was going on in the back. The people laughing were a guy and a girl, Eric and Callie. They were somewhat popular, not the top of the food chain by any means, but everyone knew them. My younger sister knew Eric. They had a tennis match a month or two earlier. Eric was really funny. This is a crucial element to this story. He was definitely the class clown. He was tall, good-looking, and extremely charismatic. I wasn't attracted to him, but I could see why everyone else was. I think it was at this point in time where I made one of the most regrettable decisions of my life. I decided I wanted to be friends with Eric. Eric was in my 2nd, 5th, and 6th periods. The next morning, I poked him in the back in Spanish class. "Hey," I said, "I heard my sister kicked your butt in tennis." He turned around with a goofy smile, his friends all looking at me. "Who's your sister?" His voice had a specific cadence to it. "Who's your sister?" His voice had a specific cadence to it. "Karen," I replied. I don't remember the rest of this encounter, but I'm pretty sure he denied losing the tennis match. I think the conversation ended shortly thereafter, and my day continued until I saw him in math class. Algebra 2 is one of those classes where the teacher would lecture for a while, give us homework, and then let us have the rest of the period to work on it so we wouldn't have to do it when we got home. I was looking at my paper, probably confused, when I hear a familiar voice. "Hey, girl." I looked down and saw Eric, crouched next to my desk on the floor. "What's up?" He started asking me about tennis, and once I said that I played, a huge smile spread across his face. I think this is when he latched onto me. He asked for my phone number and I gave it to him. That day in our next period, he introduced me to Callie. She was older and really intimidating. I had never met anyone like her, and I was beginning to get excited at the prospect of these new, interesting friends. That night he kept texting me nonstop. He would ask me questions and then would reply, "Ha ha 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 ha," to everything I said. I thought it was weird, but that it was just his humor. After this day, he didn't leave my side. We spent most of the school day together, and then we would be in constant contact after school.
What the fuck?
This was 2011, so we were mostly on Facebook or doing group phone calls with Callie and two other friends of mine I had brought into the group, Sasha and Natalie. There were lots of red flags. Eric wanted me to hold hands with him at school, and told everyone he had taken my virginity. For some reason, this wasn't something I got too mad about. I just thought it was weird. He would say, "Your virginity belongs to me." Again, I assumed it was a joke. I always assumed Eric wasn't attracted to girls because...
There you go, assuming stuff. And that's when it starts to go downhill. When you start assuming stuff. When you start doing that shit. That's when the cluck ups really begin. I mean, sure, some cluck ups may happen in the beginning, but when that moment when you start assuming stuff, that moment when you start brushing off stuff, that's when it really happens. Let's keep on watching and listening.
He said he wasn't, although he would have sex with them and then tell everyone, making fun of them. We would walk down the hallway after fifth period, and he would stop for a group of freshman girls waiting for him to give them each a peck on their lips. One time, we were walking to the bus, and there was a girl about 10 feet in front of us. She was cheating on her boyfriend, which I whispered to him, pointing her out. Yes, it was childish, but keep in mind this was high school when I was 15. He proceeds to run towards her and stops her, only to point at me and tell her what I said. She came over and yelled at me, and he watched, laughing. A few months into the friendship, I began sneaking out with Eric, bringing him alcohol from my dad's liquor cabinet. Eric was a heavy drinker, especially considering our age. This came to a head when he asked Callie and I to come over one night. His dad was in prison, and his mom was in rehab, so he lived with his grandparents. We pulled up outside of his house, and his car wasn't there. He waited for a while, and finally, he sped into the neighborhood and stumbled out of the driver's side, wasted. We followed him inside. His grandparents weren't home. I don't know what I said, but next thing I know, he grabs a knife off the kitchen counter and charges at me. I took off running and made it into Callie's car, slamming the door shut and locking it. He stares at me through the window before bursting out in laughter. My heart was racing and my blood ran cold. Callie got into the car and we left. I don't know why I stuck around. It was like an abusive relationship. He told me he was the only guy who would ever find me attractive, but somehow it would turn into a joke and I would just let it go. I believe the breaking point was when I heard about the baby squirrel. He had found a live baby squirrel after school and brought it home. His grandparents said they didn't want it in the house, so he walked outside and tossed it into the retention pond before walking back in. I wasn't there for that, but it disgusted me. In algebra a few days later, he knocked my pen off my desk and called me an idiot. Eric, I don't want to be friends with you anymore, I told him firmly. So, don't talk to me. His head snapped back and he moved to the desk in front of mine. You won't be able to ignore me, he laughed. I know where to find you. I'm going to college next year, I reminded him. You'll never be able to get away from me. Are you threatening me? Yeah, I am. I know this sounds like a cheesy horror movie, but that was our exchange, word for word. The next week was endless phone calls and him trying to get me to talk to him at school. At first it was jovial, when he thought I was going to change my mind. And then he came up to me in math class and opened his backpack. Inside were several large kitchen knives. In case there's a zombie attack, you know? Another big smile. I should have told the teacher at that point. I really should have. But it wasn't until a few days later when he pushed me too far. I'm gonna have my way with you, and then end your life. And I'll make Natalie film it. I went to the dean's office and told him everything. I had grown up being told not to snitch, but I couldn't focus in class anymore. I had been a good kid. I've never been in trouble, so they believed what I told them. Here's the kicker. They called him into the office, and he admitted to everything. Nodded, smiling, confirming all of the stories I had told them. Dean Thomas sat me down the next day and told me that I needed to call the police. They said there was clearly something wrong with him and that he didn't get it. They put a school version of a restraining order on him. He wasn't to talk to me, and during tests, he had to be taken to a separate classroom. He would do everything he could to get around those rules. He would talk about me right in front of my face, but wasn't technically talking to me. He said out loud to the class, "Some girl put a restraining order on me because she thinks I'm dangerous." The teacher laughed and said, "Doesn't she know you're joking? That's just you being Eric, right?" The backlash I faced was enormous. All of his groupies shunned me and laughed at me. Even my own friends said I was overreacting. Except for Natalie. She was always intuitive. She said he made her feel uncomfortable and had started following her from class to class. When his birthday came, he approached me with Callie, and Callie said, "He wants you to wish him a happy birthday." Eventually, a mutual friend called me and told me Eric had threatened to end his life if I wouldn't talk to him again. I went back to the dean's office, and this time, every dean, vice principal, and even the principal got involved. My school was big, and there were 550 kids in my class.
Damn.
The school year ended, and without the protection of the authorities there, I was fielding more phone calls, and when I blocked his number, he would call me on Callie's phone. He would drive around my neighborhood to see if my car was in the driveway. He even came to my tennis matches, the ones we initially bonded over. I could see his silhouette in the fence, watching me. By senior year, things had calmed down. His attention was elsewhere, and I had picked my classes with the dean to ensure we weren't in any together. He was still watching. I would be walking down the hallway with someone he didn't know, and all of a sudden he would be walking with us, next to my unassuming friend.
It's something. It's something. I mean, he already said it, but like, there's something wrong with this dude. Like, and I. I know about 3 people that's like this. They not really my friends like that because of this and certain things that they do and certain actions that they do. But I know about 3 people that act similar to this. And that is so fucking weird. No matter how many times you try to, you know, be like, hey, this is not right. Or like, hey, you need to stop this. Or like, they don't like this. Or just please stop. No matter how many times you try to get it through their head, it never sticks. It never sticks. Stitch? Lilo and Stitch.
I'm Eric. Nice to meet you. He told my friends he had decided to wait for me because we were soulmates, and I'd come around eventually. I graduated high school and moved out of town. I told my new college friends that if something ever happened to me, he was the one who did it. And that's all. There's no conclusion, really, except he always knows when I come into town. I don't know how, because I have him blocked on everything. I suspect he still checks my house. He's been arrested since on drug charges and a few DUIs. I'm looking at his mugshots as I write this, to remember those dead eyes. This happened last year at the peak of my partying stage.
Okay.
I was at a friend's house drinking, and around 2 a.m., I was pretty out of it and decided to call an Uber to take me home. The car pulled up, and I have this habit of sitting at the front with the driver. He was...
See, I've had my fair share of Ubers, and I don't not really do on some parts. Find Ubers okay. But I completely understand why most people do not like Ubers or Lyft or any of those other companies that just pick you up and you're in a completely stranger's car. Like a complete stranger's car. I understand that and I get that. I understand. But yeah, I don't know. Ubers. I don't know about this.
Man, around mid to late 20s, and I don't remember too much about what we were talking about, but I do recall his compliments going from, "You're really pretty," to, "You're really hot." And he kept saying I reminded him of his mom. I found it really strange,
What?
especially considering I was 19, but I tried to laugh it off because I didn't want to appear rude. I asked him to swing by the drive-thru at the burger spot because I was hungry. We got the food, and he was supposed to take me home, but I noticed he was driving literally the complete opposite way of where my house was. I looked at his map, and it kept telling him to turn around, so I asked him where he was going, and I remember him looking over at me and saying, "Oh, you don't want to come over to my house?" I remember I was completely sobered up and said, "No, please take me home." I don't recall if we continued talking after that, but luckily he took me home and I never heard from him again. I also reported him the next day. What really upsets me is that he clearly knew I was inebriated and tried taking advantage of me.
Son of a...
I can't imagine what would have happened if I had never spoken up. It's safe to say I won't be Ubering alone at night anymore.
Yeah, that'll do it. That'll do it to you.
So I matched with this girl on Tinder, Jenna. Jenna and I went on our first date on January 26th. She knew I was out of a long-term relationship and still maintain occasional contact with my ex, Mary. Jenna and I officially started calling each other boyfriend and girlfriend around mid-February. 3 days ago, while in the shower, she goes through my phone and reads old messages between Mary and I. A few casual ones and a few very affectionate ones from before Jenna and I started seeing each other or even met. Jenna packs all of her things and is heading out of the door when I get out of the shower, with my phone. She texts a bunch of people saying things like, "I'm an asshole," and "Mary is a manipulative bitch." She hacks into my Facebook and makes a post calling Mary a whole slew of names and blocks and unfriends several of my friends. She does a similar thing with Twitter. I get hold of a coworker's phone and use it to try and contact her and sign back into my Facebook. Once she realizes I did this, she changed my password and my email passwords as well. Eventually she tells me she wants to talk this out and to meet at my place. I play along so I can get my phone and passwords back. She gives me my phone and makes me call Mary and tell her I'm cutting her out of my life. I got a hold of Mary earlier and warned her something like this might happen. We both have a background in theater, so we had a very convincing argument over speakerphone so Jenna can hear. Jenna gives me my passwords and I immediately change them. I tell her she should leave, and she doesn't understand why I want her out of my life. She goes home very upset about me breaking up with her over this. Jenna starts posting and commenting on my Facebook, and I block her. I blocked her on everything, and she begins calling me over and over, not saying anything when I try to pick up the phone. I block her number. I start receiving the same calls over and over from a Colorado number. I live in Canada. Eventually I got my phone provider and changed my number. I also changed the locks on my door in case she took my key. The next day, she makes a Facebook page calling me a piece of shit and Mary manipulative, and she hacks into my alt Twitter account. I tell her that if she tries calling me one more time or posts one more thing about anybody I know, I'm calling the police. I get an email saying that my application for a credit card with a bank I do not use has been approved. I call the bank and tell them what's happening, and they put a freeze on the account. Several friends have told me to call the police, and I finally realize enough is enough. The police come and tell me that she has some sort of file with them, and that her name isn't even Jenna. It's something completely different. They issue a warning of harassment, and if she tries to contact me again, I'll call the police and she'll be arrested. On Monday, I have to call the fraud people and get all my accounts frozen and investigated and stuff. I realize this is a lot, but this is actually a pretty bare-bones version of this story. Basically, the reason I'm posting this is now that the police got involved, and I've had my locks changed and my number changed, and all is solved, I'm starting to feel the emotional damage of being abused and harassed by someone I was really starting to care about, and I don't know how to deal with it. Hey friends, thanks for listening. If you got a story, be sure to submit them to my subreddit, r/Let's Read Official, and give and receive feedback from the community. Be sure to check out my Choose Your Own Path horror game on the iOS and Android App Store, and grab early access to all future narrations for just $1 a month on Patreon. Links in the bio. Thanks so much, friends, and I'll see you again soon.
See, look, this is where I'm at a loss, right? This is where I'm in a dilemma. Is I don't really know if I'm saying that right. I tend to say a lot of words that I don't know fully myself. I just say it to sound smart. But that's not me. I use very I use very um not so big words, as you would say. As yeah. But this is where I'm at, like a um you know, I'm at a pause right now. Why, like, if don't pause. Don't freeze. If you don't freeze, I mean, like yeah, if you don't freeze, then you won't get clocked up. If you freeze, you have a more chance of getting clucked up. Like, you have a more, you freezing, and your chances of getting clucked up is about you getting a red uh, starburst from the bag, or like randomly. Yeah, you're not even looking. You getting a random, you know, just you trying to get a red starburst, but every time, 9 times out of 10, you don't. So what I'm saying is to you, right, is stop pausing, stop freezing, and just run. I mean, I don't know how to get them no more blunt than that. I really don't. I really like. But yeah, so anybody that's like does delivery, let me know your stories, cause there's not a chance in hell that I would ever do that. Like, I mean, it sounds like a chill job, but you going to random people's houses. You don't know what they up to. You don't know what they doing, what they did in their past. Cause once they open that door, God only knows what's in that house, or apartment, or condo, or trailer, or whatever. Like, behind closed doors, that's free game. So just stay at the base. If you can't stay at the car and just stow whatever they have, pizza, Chinese food, um, whatever. If you can't just like toss it while you're at the car, just be at the base of their door, at their doorstep, and that's it. Just stay right there. You don't need to go no more further. You don't. You do that, you clucking up. You already clucking up by leaving your car. Cause now you like a couple feet away. Just saying, something pop off. You gotta run to your car and and start your car up. When in reality, you could have possibly stayed at your car, kept it on. Be like, hey, your food is right here. I'm gonna leave it right here. You can come and get it, but I'm out. And you miss me with going to like abandoned creepy places. Nah, I only go to like well lit, high populated places. Don't send me to no dark ass alley, or no dark ass like neighborhood where it's like barely any lights, and the only lights are coming from within the house. There's no street lights. No, 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 no. So anybody that's that's ever did that delivery or whatever, sorry. Anybody that's doing that now, I'm sorry. Anybody that's about to do that, cancel all plans and find a different job. Just saying. Or a different position. Yeah. Hey. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Keep it cool, keep it classy. You can still, that's crazy. You can still hear the sickness in my voice. It's been 17 years now. Jeez. Keep it cool, keep it classy, and I love you. Stay happy.